So first, I would like to thank you all for coming today and welcome to my session on serving Blazor components in Angular front ends. And if this is not the session you wanted to be in, it's okay, you can leave. I won't hold it against you. A little bit about me. My name is Jennifer Gibson, and I'm a software developer here at Orlando's very own CyberMedics. Come see us in the lobby downstairs if you haven't. And just like I work mostly with Blazor, .NET, and Angular. And just a little fun fact, I really couldn't tell you if I like front end or back end better. I think they both have their own unique challenges. And I like being able to switch back and forth, especially when I'm stuck on something. But you aren't here to learn about me, you're here to learn about Blazor and Angular, so we can go ahead and get started. Today we're going to cover some knowledge slides, and then we're going to flip over to the coding fun. I know the session said intermediate and that it assumes a basic understanding of Angular and Blazor, but I do just want to do a little refresher first, just in case anybody needs one, or if you're new to either of them and you just wanted to come because you thought it sounded cool, in which case you're right, it is really cool. And I can't wait to show it to you. And we're also going to go over a little bit about custom elements, and then we're going to talk about why we would want to do any of this at all. So let us start with Angular. Angular is an open source application design framework and development platform. It uses TypeScript, which is basically strongly typed JavaScript. And when you run your Angular app, TypeScript converts to JavaScript. Angular uses components, which are small pieces of code that can be reused frequently and are really common in single-page applications, and you can use them to make an entire app. Angular is run by a dedicated team at Google, and many of Google's own apps are built on the Angular framework, like the Google Cloud Platform or AdWords, which is one I know I've heard a lot about from some of my marketing friends. Because Angular is run by Google and they use it themselves, it's expected to have long-term support and stability. The docs are at angular.io. Use my little laser pointer here. And then while I was putting this together, I found that there's actually a really pretty new beta doc site at angular.dev. It's very pretty, and I liked it a lot. So I put it on here too, and those are both great resources. Next, we will go to Blazor. So on the other side, we have Blazor, which is also an open source framework and development platform. However, it also has server-side and client-side rendering. Blazor uses .NET and C#, which allows you to make great web apps without using JavaScript. You can use JavaScript, but that's something that we're not going to talk about today. It's a cross-platform language, and because it uses C#, it is strongly typed. And one of the nice things about Blazor is that if you already work with .NET, it's going to be super familiar, and you're really going to be able to pick it up. And it can also be used with other Microsoft projects like WPF and mobile development. Much like Angular, Blazor also uses those components to make up a whole app, and it also has other cool features like templating. Microsoft has been and continues to be a longtime leader in tech. I know we have all heard of Microsoft, so it is also expected to have that long-term support and stability. The link to the docs for Blazor is here as well. This one is a little harder to remember than the Angular one, but if you can't remember it or get it down, then a classic developer problem-solving skill will come in handy, and that is Google it. Yes, I got laughs. All right, so I do want to talk a little bit about Blazor server-side versus the client-side, which is WebAssembly. Both of them definitely have their benefits and their downsides, but both of them do use Razor components. Server-side runs in ASP.NET Core, while client-side runs in the browser on a .NET runtime. In server-side, all of the UI and events in JavaScript are handled over SignalR using WebSockets, while with WebAssembly, they're executed on the browser UI thread. Server-side does have a smaller download size compared to WebAssembly, And server-side also has easier debugging on the server, and and WebAssembly, you can use web APIs, which is nice. Kind of the downsides, server side does have higher latency and no offline support. And then for WebAssembly, the client side code is not really protected from inspection or tampering. And you can do serverless deployment as well, kind of like a CDN. If you want more information, you can just probably Google Blazor hosting models, and I'm sure the site I got all of this information from will pull right up. But they are both great options. For me, I have worked most closely with server side, and we are going to be using Blazor server side today, but I did just want to give you a little rundown here. Next is custom elements. Custom elements make it possible for developers to use non-standard elements in HTML. Non-standard being an element that's not a div or a p tag or an a tag that we're used to seeing. Custom elements were added to the HTML standard about 6 years ago, and they just extend the HTML. So you can see if you just have a class here, it's going to extend HTML element, and you're going to name it here, and then in the HTML you use it just like a regular tag, and the name is my greeting. There's my greeting there. At the end of 2022, when .NET 7 was released, they added in official support for custom elements as well, which is great. So beforehand, an Angular JavaScript site and Blazor couldn't speak to each other. You could probably like iframe one into the other, but they couldn't go back and forth. But now a Blazor component can be registered as one of these custom elements, and so you can run Blazor anywhere you run JavaScript. And then there's more information on custom elements on the bottom. And so in just a few more minutes, we're going to get into the fun code about how to do that. But first, I want to talk about why. Why do we even want to do this? Why would we do it? Why not just cut Angular completely out and build a Blazor app? Yeah, or the other way around. So there are a few good reasons somebody might want to use Blazor components in such a manner, and the first one is legacy systems. Sometimes we do encounter outdated systems that are still in use, and we need to add to it. We can use Blazor components to add fresh new code, new components, and better functionality to a legacy system. The next reason really piggybacks right onto that, and that is transition. If you're using Blazor components to add new features to a legacy system, gradually you could transition it to a more updated modern technology. And then eventually the whole app would be transitioned over. This is also a more cost-effective way to transition for clients, as it is in smaller chunks, which tend to be more affordable than large transition projects. And finally, sometimes Blazor might just be a better fit for this piece, which is actually the reason that I ended up going down this whole rabbit hole of doing this. So come along on a little story with me. We had a client that had a really large grid table, and they wanted to add a drag and drop feature to it. And so for us at CyberMedics, we like to use Telerik products, if you're familiar with those. So we were using a Kendo UI for Angular grid, which are really cool. If you're not familiar with them, check it out. But a couple of things worked against us in our client's drag and drop request. And the first thing was that this grid was really big, it was dynamically built, and there's just a lot of data in it. And the second thing is that Kendo UI for Angular does not have a drag and drop feature. So we couldn't just like easily pop it in there, which caused us to do a custom HTML, JavaScript drag and drop on that table, which was unbearably slow. It was basically unusable, and neither myself nor CyberMedics as a whole would ever deliver that. It was not the solution. But the plot twist here is that the Telerik UI for Blazor grid does have a drag and drop feature. And it's really nice, it's really pretty. So we were able to rebuild this grid in a Blazor component. The drag and drop feature worked so smoothly, and then we could just plop it right into their Angular app. Now there are other ways to do drag and drop out there. Like I know there's like sortable.js. But for us, we would eventually like to transition this project into a Blazor app. You see the transition of it all. And so that's why we went this route, because we've got a Blazor component, it was the best fit, and we do want to eventually move that project over. So those are some reasons why we would want to do this. And we've come to the how, which is the fun stuff. We're going to look at the code, and we're going to have a little fun, and we're even going to play some Mad Libs. If anybody remembers that road trip game, and just start thinking of your parts of speech, like proper nouns and all those things that we haven't thought of since like high school. I had to work really hard to remember what they were. So one thing that you're going to need for this is a project with both Angular and Blazor set up in it. I already have one set up in Git for this purpose, so let's just assume in this world that you do as well. For me, I personally like to use VS Code and Visual Studio when I'm working. So I have like the Angular and VS Code, and I have .NET and Blazor and Visual Studio, and they're running ideally on 2 screens. We're going to be working with one today, but it'll be fine. And so that's how I like to work. We're going to see that. And both are pretty standard project setups. There's really nothing crazy. As I mentioned, I do have a GitHub for this demo. And I have a link at the end, so you can like grab a screen, like a picture of it if you wanted to go dive into how the projects are set up or the code works. I do just ask, I think there might be some public repos on there from when I was learning to code. So if you do look at those, don't judge me too harshly. We all had to learn at some point, right? But they're there, so you know. All right, so we are going to begin with the Blazor side of the project. So the first thing we need is to set up a basic Blazor component. We're going to switch over for just 1 second. We're going to do a little switchy here, and then we're going to just be in code the rest of the time. So don't look at that, it's a spoiler. First we have right here, it's just a little simple component. There's not even code in it, and it says, what is it? Orlando Code Camp 2024 Fun Time component. Just a simple component, and we're going to get it running. And then it's just going to open up in the regular like Blazor starter project screen. Let's see, this went pretty fast earlier. Hopefully it'll go faster right now. And here we have it. Our component is working, our Blazor project is working, and you can see that it's right here. So from here, we just have to do a couple of things to prepare our Blazor side to serve these custom elements. We're going to need to install 2 NuGet packages. The first one is the Microsoft ASP.NET Core Components.CustomElements package, and the second is the ASP.NET Core Components.Web package. These are the only 2 things that we're going to need. They work together in tandem to kind of provide the mechanisms that allow the component to be turned into those custom elements, or as I like to say, that does all of the magic, which goes great with our speaker shirts. I didn't even plan that, or the shirts today that say coding magic or something like that. And so now that we have the packages installed, we're going to complete our setup in the program.cs file. So here, we're going to look at this in the builder. Hopefully you guys can see all of that. Where we add our server-side Blazor, we can add several options. And again, this is the program.cs file, so it's the one that runs the app. We're going to register a custom element. So it's options.rootcomponents.register custom element. And then in the type angle tags, we're just going to put in the name of the component that we want to become that custom element. That first one was just a simple component, and so that's what we've got in there. In these parentheses at the end, you'll see a string called simple. That is what we are going to use our element on the Angular side. So the Angular element tags are just going to say whatever we put right here. I have this saying simple, and I'm going to cut over to the Angular project real fast because I do want to show you a really important thing that had me stuck for a really long time when I couldn't figure out why this wasn't working. So you'll note it's called simple. We'll go to the Angular project, and you can see right here where I'm trying to use that custom element, I've got an error. All the other ones seem to work, so why can I not do that? That is because per HTML specification, all custom elements need to be in kebab case, which means all lowercase, hyphen, and then another lowercase word if you're not familiar with kebab case. So you can see all of the other ones are set up like that. And if I come over here and change it, we're going to make it simple component. And we're just going to save it and run it again so we don't have to watch it later. And we come over here and change this to simple component. Whoop. That error goes away, and it's not mad at all anymore. So it is really important to remember that you want to use that kebab case. Honestly, I spent so long trying to figure out why it wouldn't work when it was so simple as that. And I just think it's so funny. It was simple component. It was a simple solution. The jokes write themselves. I don't even, what am I here for? But if you do forget it and you can't figure out why it's working, the custom element Blazor docs do have a whole section on naming. And so it'll tell you. And so as soon as I pulled up the docs, I was like, oh, that's it. So I did want to cover that. And with that, that's all we have to do on the Blazor side. It's actually really simple. So we are going to head over to the Angular app. From here, we're going to need to do several different things to set up. I want to start in the index.html file, wow, stutter, which is down here in the list. We are going to add 2 script tags to the index.html file, which are already here. We have this one, which is _content, Microsoft ASP.NET Core.components.custom elements. That might look pretty familiar, and that is because that is the same name as the package that we just installed in our Blazor app. And so this says, hey, there's custom elements coming from somewhere else, and they can kind of talk to each other. The second one is just the _framework blazor.server.js script tag. And that says, hey, we're going to be using Blazor server side in here. It just needs it to run those components totally. And that is all we have to do to the index.html file. Next, we are going to have to add a new file to our app. I've already added it in here. I'm going to open it up, and it is a proxy file. So I have my Angular project running on localhost 4200. The Blazor project is running on localhost 5203, I think. So when the Angular project makes its calls to find those custom components, it's going to be looking for localhost 4200, and it's not going to be able to find them because they're on 5203. So we're going to add in this proxy file that's going to say, if you see any calls with these strings in them, it's the _framework, the _content, like the ones we just added in the index file, switch it to this target and use localhost 5203. And then the proxy file will switch that up, and it'll tell them where to find the Blazor components. I've exported it so that we can use it elsewhere. And then just a couple other things on here. The secure is whether or not it's using HTTPS. The WS is WebSockets. And then the log level, I have it set to debug so you can see the calls. It was easier for me to set it up that way. And now that we have our proxy file, it's just sitting there. So we need to tell the app to use it. So we are going to go to our angular.json file down here. We know this is like a pretty big file, but we're going to scroll down until we find the serve section, which is right here. And then in the options, we're going to add in the square brackets, the proxy config, and we're just going to tell it where to find that file that we just added. And and that's all that we need to do there. And now the app knows that when it's serving, it needs to use that proxy file. But we're not quite done yet. We have a little bit more setup to do, and then we will get to the really fun stuff in the Mad Libs, I promise. The last thing that we are going to need to do is go to the app.module.ts file. And we just have to tell it that there's going to be custom elements in this project. So up here, we are going to add the custom element schema from Angular core. For an Angular project, it's probably already going to be there. It's got that ng module import. And we're just going to add custom element schema. And then down here, where we're doing all of the declarations, we're going to add a little one that says schemas, and we're just going to put the custom element schema there. And that's all we need to do. And now our app is ready to run Blazor custom elements. So we're going to go check it out. So this is our simple component. This is the one we're going to look for in the Angular app. I have this little welcome. Welcome to my talk. Thanks for being here. In the first component, the first tab here, we have the Blazor component. And you can see that our Blazor component is now there. It's pretty cool, right? I love it. I think it's so great. Obviously, from here, the next question is, can we use parameters? Yeah, we can use parameters, and we can use parameters in 3 different ways, and we're going to cover them all. The first one, we're going to look over here. Well, let's start with the Blazor side. So we have our basic parameter component. We have our parameter set up here, as we expect with a parameter attribute. You can see it's called volunteer name. I think you guys know where this is going. And then up here, we just have, if there's a volunteer name, show it. They're going to get an air high five. And then over here on the Angular side, in our tabs, we have the basic parameters element tag. That's what I called it on the program.cs file. And we've just added in that parameter name as a property on the element tag. You'll notice here it is also in the kebab case, whereas on the Blazor side it was a capital V and a capital N. So we do have to pay really close attention to our casing with this. But let's try it out. Do I have anybody that wants to volunteer their name? Yes, you were first. Connor? Okay, is that with an O or an E? With an O. All right, we're going to come to parameters 1. And Connor gets an air high five. Great job, Connor. Thank you. So that is the first way to pass parameters. But we don't usually use parameters like this, do we? Are we hard coding parameters that often? No. We don't know what we want to pass in, so we want a variable. And to use variable parameters, we have to do it a little bit differently. So again, I'm going to start on the Blazor side. And we're going to go to our Mad Libs component. I've got it scrolled down here so you can't see the code because I don't want to give away the Mad Lib sentence before you guys get to see it. And you'll see that just like the other one, we have all the parameters on here for the different parts of speech, and they all have that parameter attribute on them. On the Angular side, we have a component here that's called the Mad Libs component. We just have all of our matching variables set up, and they're just like empty, and then we have a little submit button. And then in the HTML, we have all of these inputs, and the inputs are bound to those variables with our classic ng model, banana in a box syntax. And then you can see at the bottom here, this is our Mad Libs component. So let's go ahead and play a little Mad Libs in our parameters 2 tab. So the first thing I need is a proper noun, so a person, place, or a thing that is specific, like Orlando Code Camp or Taco Bell. Do we have anything? If you don't give me one, I'm going to use Taco Bell. Oh, we have one there. UCF, okay. And then we need a plural noun, so a person, place, or thing, but less proper, but that there's multiple of. So like unicorns, cats, board games. That probably summarizes all of my interests. So do we have any plural nouns? Anybody?
Ducks.
Ducks? All right, ducks. And a descriptive word, an adjective. Spicy. Spicy, all right. I think that we should submit that for a new mascot, right? And then we need a past tense action, a verb, like walked or ran. What'd you say? Lazy? No. It's not a verb.
Swam.
Swam? Okay. And then just a number. Anybody's lucky number? 13. All right. Okay, so up here, as I said, all of these inputs are our Angular app. When I click see the sentence, our Blazor app is going to show up underneath. It's not our Blazor app, our Blazor component. Oh my God, I can't believe I got you guys to play Mad Libs with me. So today I swam to UCF, and while there I picked up 13 spicy ducks. Sounds good for something. So how did we do that? I'm sure that you saw it when we were looking over here. To use variables, we need to first take our parameter names. Again, in the kebab case, you'll see them all here. Or if it's just like a single word, that does work here. But if it's more than one, it's got to be kebab case. Took a lot of trial and error to figure this out. And then we're going to add a modifier here for an attribute, so attr.properNoun for this one. And then we're going to put that whole thing in square brackets. And once we have it set up like this, we can pass our variables in and use those as parameters. So with the first way that I showed you, in this way of doing parameters, you can use any basic type. So we can use strings, we can use booleans, and we can use any numerical values. There is a third way to pass parameters, and that is by using JavaScript. And with JavaScript, we can pass any JSON serializable object, which does make this a little bit more complicated, but you know, sometimes we do want to pass objects, so let's check it out. On here, the Blazor side will always start over here. First, we have a model. I called it our Madlib model. And then on the model, we have all of the different properties that we need for the different parts of speech. Over here, on the Angular side, I also have a model. And again, it has all the different parts of speech on here, and then it's got this constructor that really was just making my life easier when I was writing this code. From there, we're going to need to tell our app that it has to expect JavaScript in here. So we're going to go to our tsconfig file, which is here at the root. And then in the compiler options, we're just going to have this allow.js, and we'll set it to true. From there, we need to then add a JavaScript file. I have called this one very aptly parameters.js. And so let's look at it. We have a function in here called setParameters. It is taking an input of a model, and then we're just going to use the JavaScript document.querySelector. And then here in the parentheses, we are using the name of that element. It's JavaScript parameters. That's the same one we used to set this up in program.cs, and it's the same thing we use in those element tags. And then as we've seen, there is a parameter on that component called the model. Now here, we're going to set it on the element.theModel, but this one is in camel case. So you need camel case if you're using the JavaScript stuff, and then we're just going to set it equal to the model that we're passing into the function. So over here in our JavaScript parameters Angular component, we've just got our model. It's been initialized here, and we have a little submit button. The submit button, you'll see I've imported the setParameters function from that parameters.js file. And then when you click the submit button, it's going to call that function, and it's going to pass the model into it, and that's how it's going to set the parameters. So let's go ahead and do one more round of Mad Libs. I promise you guys, this is the last one we're gonna do, and it's totally different sentence. So can I get a singular proper noun? Again, like Orlando Code Camp or Taco Bell. Microsoft, okay. A singular noun. Chicken? All right. I was thinking taco. I got a one-track mind here, clearly. And then an adjective. So again, like funny, calm, friendly, spicy.
Large. Angry.
Angry, okay. Oh my. A past tense verb, so an action that like happened already.
Digested.
Digested? Oh man, this is gonna get wild. And then a present tense verb, like walking, dancing, coding. Flying? Okay. All right. So again, up here, this is our Angular component. Actually, I skipped right over that. So let's go look at that part real fast. I just want to keep you waiting. It's like the excitement about what the sentences builds. Again, we have our inputs here, the ones we just filled out with the ng model on them. But instead of each variable, we're binding them to that object and its property. So it's the model.noun, the model.adjective. And then we also have our Blazor component down here. It's the JavaScript parameters. And so on here, when we click our See the Sentence button, our component's going to show up right here. So are you guys ready? Once upon a time, an angry chicken digested to the Microsoft. While there, the chicken picked up some flying skills. That's good. You don't see chickens flying very often. And so that is our sentence. And that is our demonstration today. So that is how you use Blazor components in Angular apps. And you can also pass in parameters. Now, we're going to switch back to the PowerPoint. Like all good things, there are downsides to this. While it has been really great to be able to use these inputs and play fun games with you guys, I appreciate you so much for contributing to that. I was really worried you wouldn't, and I would just be doing a lot of Taco Bell Mad Libs. Currently, you cannot do any outputs in any standard way back to the parent component, which to me, I think is the most frustrating part. I am like actively trying to find a way around this, but I don't have anything yet. Although, as I mentioned, I do have a GitHub for this. I'm going to have the link at the end, and if I ever do figure it out, I will try to remember to update it there. So if you are captivated and want to know, then maybe check it out every now and then. And then if I forget, and you can just say something on GitHub, and I'll be, oh yeah, okay. And the other one is that it can be very finicky with small things like the kebab case naming, and then the camel case naming, and then all of those different things are really finicky. And as I mentioned, it took me a lot of back and forth to kind of figure out how to do that stuff. There are probably more downfalls to using Blazor components like this. But to me, these are like the biggest roadblocks that I have encountered. And that is the end of my session today.
Contact CyberMedics today to schedule a detailed consultation, and let's engineer the future of your enterprise's digital evolution. Call us at 321-300-7130 or visit www.cybermedics.com.